Off with the invocation, bow with me. Father, thank you so much for this day, for the blessing of life, for your son Jesus. I pray that you give this board wisdom. I thank you for our administrators. I thank you for this community. I thank you for this county. Lord, just help us to take serious the call to public service and to do it with your wisdom and your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Now we're going to have Blake Tullock lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now, Evan Ellis, would you lead us in the pledge to the Texas flag?
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
You may be seated. Are there any public comments on any item from the agenda where somebody wants to speak now? Any public comments? Let the record show there are no public comments. Next item on the agenda is agenda number 5, approval of the minutes from May 24th, 2021. Members of the board, you should have a copy of those in your packet that's been presented to us by our administrative team. You can look at those and I'll entertain a motion about approving those minutes.
I have had a chance to look at these minutes and I move we approve.
Second.
Minutes.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda number 6, discussion and action regarding Taylor County Sheriff's request. Yes. I'm going to turn that over to whoever you decide to discuss that, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we will want to hear from the sheriff on this again, but our recommendation is to sit where we are with the 60% reimbursement and not add additional expenses to either the city or the county at this time.
Okay. So, just so we'll be up to snuff on what's going on here, the Taylor County Sheriff's Office requested specifically certification pay for their telecommunicators. Those basic amounts were basic certification was 1,000, intermediate 2, and advanced 3, and master telecommunicator was 4,000. The Abilene Police Department, if I understand this correctly, funds that certification pay through city funds.
That's
and
correct.
Those city funds include the $494,778 that we give to the city already, correct?
The amount's different. I think that one's for the sheriff.
No, the sheriff's, in my notes it says the county receives $153,200 and the city receives $494,078.
Those were the increases that the city and the county received by us adjusting our reimbursement to 60%. It does not include certification pay.
No, but is that the total amount that the county receives, and is that the total amount that the city receives?
No, sir. The actual total for the city is $1.2 million, and for the sheriff, it's $563,000.
$563,000. And the difference in that is not because of y'all like the city better than the county, but because of what?
Staffing levels.
The difference in the staffing. And so the board's recommendation is that this 60% reimbursement allows the county and the city to determine how to allocate the reimbursement as salary, certification pay, stability pay, or whatever they decide.
Yes, sir.
But it has increased from what percent to 60?
It was never a percent. It was kind of, and the reason that we settled on the percent, because there was no litmus test about how much we were reimbursing for the county or the city historically. So we came up with that methodology a couple years ago to set a bar and then watch it for a couple years and see if it was adequate or not.
So the sheriff receives 60% and the city of Abilene receives 60%?
Yes, sir.
That's all my questions, board. You may have some.
Seems like at the last meeting, the sheriff told us that the board was already funding certification pay and this was just asking for an increase. Is that the case, or? Was that included in the 60%?
There was a minute incentive pay for telecommunicators that was passed 4 or 5 years ago. I believe that went away with the 60% reimbursement.
I believe that's correct.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll entertain a motion on item number 6 on our agenda in regards to yay or nay for the action regarding Taylor County Sheriff's Office request.
I think the sheriff wants to speak.
Sheriff?
I just saw the agenda this morning, so I wasn't aware that this was on the agenda. However, it is our impression that certification pay is still being paid for and has never been voted not to do away with, and that the 60% was to cover the dispatcher's salary. So the original request is to ask to increase the certification pay. We've never been told the certification pay was done away with, and have never seen a vote to do away with it.
We can research that and come back to the board.
So as I understand it right now, the 60% increase, everything that what we allocate to the county, they're to get the certification pay directly from what we allocate and nothing more, right? The recommendation from administration was that we don't separate these, that it's 60% of what.
Correct.
Right.
That was the strategy going in.
What is the current certification pay for telecommunicators?
I believe it's nothing for basics, and $50 for intermediate, $100 for advanced, and $150 for masters. And so these are the numbers we asked to increase it, but whenever the 60% came along, we were still under the impression that the certifications pay was still there. So if that goes away, then that means dispatchers are going to be losing money that they've been getting.
So the city of Abilene is expected to,
Is that still correct, Elijah?
So the county doesn't pay certification pay historically. So any certification pay has been based on outside sources, and the amount that we have submitted for the 60% total does not include the certification amount.
Yeah, and I think that's a correct interpretation of the 60%. It does not include anything else other than staffing costs for the city as well. So that's kind of the baseline. But I think what the sheriff's point is valid, that we need to take a look at when that certification was added and what the difference is today with the 60%, and then come back to the board for a recommendation on what to do.
Anything else there? Thank you.
Thank you.
seems like there's a recommendation to be made, so potential to table this.
That's what we did last time.
And the time before.
So what I'm hearing is that we don't have any action on this at this time?
Mr. Chairman, the request was for an increase. We can still deny the increase, but come back and revisit the certification pay at the next meeting and add it as an agenda item, I believe.
Is it possible that the funds that were being provided or to the telecommunicators for the sheriff's office work, the sheriff's office was taking those funds and just calling some of them certification pay? I mean, there's obviously more than the $150 a month.
Elijah would know where, to our knowledge, the certification pay's always been there. We never knew it went away. So, and Elijah's the one that sends for the reimbursement.
From the accounting side, we've always treated it separately. Because previously it was paying for certain number of positions, and the certification was separate from how we accounted for and billed the human employee.
I mean, is it on your paycheck? Is it on your? It's divided out on
It
your.
comes out monthly, it's a separate supplement.
And we know for the city of Abilene, it's a budgetary item. I mean, it's not from other sources.
Correct.
Certification pay for their telecommunications.
The city of Abilene, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsay, the city of Abilene, I'm assuming gets the same certification pay that the county does, but they also bolster that with another incentive that the city pays for.
That is correct?
I believe so,
I think the idea was that in order to get a handle on collect no more funds than we need and keep our budget within that range, that the 60% was intended to provide reimbursements for those expenses relating to dispatchers. So we picked the authorized FTE that are budgeted for in each of the county or the city. What they do with that and how they divide that up internally is up to them. We did not want to get into adding 3 or 4 incidental related costs to that. We wanted to standardize it on a percent that we could ebb and flow each year as the board decides. So I think what Ed is talking about is taking a look at that. I'd like to go back in the history and see exactly if we added that as a separate one, and we may need to come back and talk about retracting that or changing that or doing that. But the net result is both the city and the county had their reimbursements increase easily over $100,000 each. So we think that those costs are inherent within the operation, and if we need to revisit the 60% going forward because of additional costs, whether that's cert pay or positions or what have you, I think that's well within the board's purview to take a look at that. But adding individual costs that are unique to each of the city or the county is going to be more difficult in the future to do.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Okay, I'll entertain a motion from the board.
Since administration has indicated they want to do some further research and have more conversation, I move we retable.
Mr. Pope says he wants to retable. Vincent?
Second.
There's a motion to table this and a second. All in favor say aye. It is tabled at this time. Item agenda number 7. Discussion consideration for action regarding pictometry purchase and interlocal agreement. So we have 2 things in this agenda item. It's the purchase of pictometry and then the interlocal agreement that goes along with that. And we'll turn this over to our administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We renegotiated our existing contract with Eagleview to include higher resolution imagery south of the city in the areas of development around Tuscola and Buffalo Gap and the corridor. And it increased our contract by a total of $75,000 over 3 years. Additional coverage areas, $37,858. Of course, as you know, this is split between all 4 entities and paid over 3 years, so it brings our annual payment to $18,905 per entity per year over 3 years. The interlocal is exactly the same as the last interlocal with the updated amounts reflected.
And if I understand correctly, this has already been approved by City Council and Commissioners Court?
Yes, sir.
And City Council, Commissioners Court, and the 911, the 911 district, and then the Taylor County Appraisal District is all on board with this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Entertain a motion from the board.
A motion that we approve the action regarding pictometry purchase and interlocal agreement.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. All right, number 8, renewal of agreement between the Abilene-Taylor County 911 District Board of Managers and the City of Abilene for providing district administration and support.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, every 5 years, we renew the agreement between the Abilene-Taylor County 911 District and the City of Abilene for the administrative services that the city provides to the board for cost saving and for cost savings. We recommend that the board approve the agreement.
Is there any comment or questions from the board?
No changes, business as usual as previous, under previous arrangements.
Yes, sir.
There's actually
I have
a track change copy in there that shows exactly what was changed.
Yeah. And that's just, I mean, verbiage just a bit. I mean, it's nothing as far as,
No substantial
No
changes?
substantial, yeah.
No, sir.
district, board changed to district. Yeah, I have no questions.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agreement between the City of Abilene and the board for their support.
Second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I think we're on number 9. Discussion and action regarding Taylor County Sheriff's request for dispatch equipment.
We'll turn this one over to Sheriff Bishop.
Thank you. Over the last few years, in the way dispatch has moved and expanded, we've replaced everything in there so far except for the telex headset system. That system is aging, and we've pieced it together and added some new stuff to some old stuff. We're still having some minor issues in there, and it's our belief that it involves the telex headset system, which not only does phones and all the phones, 911 phones, but does radios as well. So everything is tied into this particular system. To replace this system is $294,000. And that should get us where we need to be. Also in that is a quality assurance software program for checking the 911 calls, and that cost is $2,500.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any questions from the board?
I think that based on the administration's recommendation and this falling within our purview, I think we ought to approve. So,
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
aye.
It's approved. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
I missed agenda item number 3.
We were hoping to have a new municipal rep at this time, but we do not. So
Who decides who that's going to be?
we sent out a letter to all the municipalities asking for nominations and have not received anything back
Okay.
as of yet.
Thank you very much. We'll continue on then with number 10, presentation and acceptance of annual audit for year-end September 2020.
Mr. Mike Raines.
Yes, sir. Mike Raines, Finance Director for the city. The audit last year for September 30th of 2020 was prepared by BKD out of Dallas. They did the city audit. They had opinion was the financial statements were presented fairly in all material respects. And the 911 district is included with that audit. So in your packet, if you look at the page 74, the balance sheet of the 911 district, you'll see your total assets decreased by about $1.1 million, which was primarily cash and investments. Payables were down about $250,000. Your fund balance decreased about $907,000. The revenues and expenditures on a GAAP basis, your revenues were down in total by about $400,000. That was made up of your wireless service fees actually were fairly even with the previous year. The wireline service fees dropped about $122,000, and investment earnings were down the wireline service fees were down $278,000, and investments were down $122,000 because of the low interest rates that we're seeing right now. Expenditures, you had $3,370,982 in expenditures. That is about a $370,000 increase over the previous year. The two main areas that increased were phone service was up about $133,000, and your capital outlay for communication center equipment was up about $200,000. So overall, with $2.4 million of revenues, 3.37 expenditures, you had a net expenditures over revenues of about $907,000. Comparing that to your budget on page 76 of your packet, you had budgeted $2.4 million of revenue. You actually collected just about $3,000 less than that, or $2,000 less. So that was very good on the revenue side. Expenditures, there's a $2.4 million budget. Actually only spent $1.7 million. So actually came out ahead overall, combining revenues and expenditures, about $694,000 for the year, the fiscal year. And combining that with your fund balances, you end up on a budgetary basis with about $5.3 million of fund balance, and on a GAAP basis, about $6.9 million. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So I'm really glad that this, all I heard for a couple of months here a while back was that we are collecting too much money and the public is getting problems because of these different fees that we charge, or this one fee that we charge. But according to what you just told me, that doesn't reflect in our budget, correct?
It does. Your expenditures will vary depending on how much you spend on capital equipment, and that's going to go up and down every year. Last year, the last 2 years have really been big years on the capital equipment purchases, so you end up with a deficit, so to speak. If you just look at your operating expenditures, you're probably in pretty good shape.
Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have, Board.
I move that we accept the annual audit report as presented to us.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There is none. All right, the next thing is the discussion and action of the revised FY 2021 and proposed FY 2022 budget. You'll find in your packet the items there in regard to that.
Mr. Chairman, if you'll turn your attention to the budget sheet here, we have our original budget for 2021 and our 2021 revised. You can see our phone service went up slightly. Everything else is basically on track to what we proposed for our 21 budget. And our proposed 22 budget is right on track with business as usual. You'll see that the 911 COA and Taylor County dispatcher line items have increased for the city and decreased for the county. That is based on the budgeting numbers that we received from both the county and the city for the 60% reimbursement. You'll also notice that the technology fund transfer has increased due to equipment refreshes for administration. I'll take any questions.
So I just want to make sure that I understand something correctly. In the upcoming year, 2022, we're still going to be collecting a 911 fee off of phone service. And that's where the 911 district gets their income. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
No other place do they get income other than that fee?
We get it from the surcharge, which is the wire line fee, and then we get it from the wireless fee.
Yes, but it all has to do with a surcharge or a fee that's charged on your telephone bills and on your mobile phone bills,
That
correct?
is the extent of our income, yes.
And those fees are directly to benefit the 911 district in the service of the citizens with 911 service. That's correct?
Yes, sir. The allowable expenses allow us to fund anything at the public safety answering
Yes.
point for the
And
PSAP.
I think the administration and the board is doing a crackerjack job on that. The reason why I want to make sure this is clear is because I understand as people begin to insert opinions into things, sometimes I don't want to get the board or the district in a bind by not collecting enough on the fees that we set every year. For as many years, I've been on this board a long time, and it's always been 6% for how many years? A long time.
Since 2006 until
Since
this past year.
2006. The last board meeting, we lowered that percentage to what? 2%.
2%.
Okay, and now it's, well, we'll get to that other percentage that we're going to set in just a little bit. But how is going from 6% to 2%, are we still where we can do what needs to be done, including any unforeseen circumstances where we can have a good handle on what we need to do? That's my concern with this budget. And if you as administration can tell me that this budget, you feel that way, then I'm good. But I wanted to ask the specific question of that.
Yes, sir. I can get into more detail on that when we get to the actual agenda item, but this is forecast using the numbers that we are recommending, yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
What's the reason for the 22 budget being almost half the 21 budget?
We have not included any communications equipment approvals yet. You'll see on the screen right now, Mr. Saxon has added in the equipment for the sheriff's office, and that increased our expenditures already. So, and I want to be clear about this. This is the proposed budget that you are approving. It doesn't reflect the immediate changes from this meeting on this paper.
I got you. And plus, I'm thinking, I may be wrong, but I'm thinking the city of Abilene built a new dispatch center last year too, right? Or was that
It was 2 years ago now.
19?
And there was a substantial investment from the board with that. But again, the Taylor County Sheriff's Office dispatch just got full customer premise equipment refresh and new workstations, and we anticipate more expenses from Taylor County when they relocate, if they relocate their PSAP.
So the money we approved today kind of brings it closer
Yes,
to
sir.
last year.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I move we approve the revised FY 2021 proposed 2022 budget.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes. No nays. All right, we moved to agenda item number 12. This is discussion and action to perform an audit of service, suppliers, lines, billing, and fees. I have thought about this extensively since I got my packet telling me what's in this agenda, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the administration has to say about this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an effort. One of the things that you asked us to do about a year ago was take a look at the billing systems out there when we started receiving feedback that the AT&T service provider rates were rising faster than could be afforded by either telcos or actual citizens. So we started taking a look at it. What I realized is we could not find any historical document where we actually surveyed the telecommunication service providers and did actual line counts, and then received indications on how they were associating whatever our fee or service charge was onto those lines, onto either consumers or businesses. So it became kind of a foggy void about how particular telcos are assigning those percentages or fees and how they're collecting them, and there was no audit of the line. So we could not, with 100% accuracy, forecast either revenue or expenditures or costs or any of those things without knowing what our basis of reimbursement was going to be or how many fees we were going to collect or from who. So this is an effort to actually document that for the first time that I believe in the history of the board, and go from there. And hopefully during that process we'll get a little bit better understanding with not only the communication service providers but also be able to report back to the board that there are some things that we can do as a board differently that will make this clearer and easier to understand for all concerned.
I think this is great. It keeps us healthy, and I'm all for this.
Yes, so thank you very much. So for us to do our job as the 911 Board of Directors, to make good decisions, we have to have good answers. And right now, our administration is telling us that they can't give us good answers until we have an audit so they can have the knowledge and then pass that knowledge to us to know about the different telephone companies and what they charge and so on and so forth. I want to reiterate, we are not in the business of telling telephone companies how much to charge or how to run their business, but we are in the business of taking a portion of those fees, thus our name gets brought into with them. And we can't accurately defend ourselves or even go out and request things different unless we know what the specifics are. And this recommendation from our administration is telling us that they want to have somebody audit those numbers so that we can have an accurate count, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who's supposed to do that?
It would be a vendor of our choosing, but we're looking to the 911 Alliance for who they have used in the past and get some recommendations from them.
And what's the cost of that going to be?
We don't know that as of yet.
Ballpark.
It would be hard pressed to guess that, but I'm thinking that we can definitely bring that back to the board when we have a couple options. I think it's going to vary. Some Alliance members have done very small, succinct, targeted audits. Others have done across the board, which actually increases the expense. We're probably going to be somewhere in the middle of that, but I couldn't give you an answer on what that would cost actually today.
Right. And my issue right this second is I think the idea is awesome. It's just I don't want to have to come back and pay $1 million for awesome. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And I know the question will be asked of me, well, why doesn't our administration do that? And I would just like an answer to that question so that I will have an answer to it.
We do not have the resources to do any of that, so there would be additional charges from city administration, and we would likely outsource that ourselves rather than add that burden to finance, who also does not have the resources to perform that audit. So either way, it's going to be an outside supplier that does it.
Again, I think this is a great idea. It'll get us a base that we've needed for a long time, not with anything that's internal, but with what we deal with that's external. And it helped me understand things a lot better at times. This last time when we had all these people writing in and calling me about the fees that we charge, I couldn't give them an intelligent answer because I didn't have enough information about the people that we charge a fee to. I didn't know who was doing what or what was going on, and we were getting the blame. And if I'm going to get the blame, I need to be blamed for something I did, not something I didn't do. So
Even at the last meeting, I think we discussed this, and no one could provide the answer.
That's exactly right.
So I think an audit is in order too, but what I'm hearing from the chairman is that we should research the cost before we make a decision on approving it, or?
I don't even mind going ahead and approving it as long as we don't step out on a limb here without going through the correct process for how much it costs. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And you know, I have come to appreciate our administration of the 911 board a lot. And so I'm deferring to your decision to take it out. I just don't want to sign a blank check is my deal. So as the board chairman, I am in favor of this recommendation. I just don't, I want to make it on the record that I don't want to sign a blank check. So however we need to do that is fine with me.
How often does the administration expect or recommend that we perform an audit of this type?
We don't really have a historical basis since it's never been done in the history of the organization. I think this is a one-shot deal until years pass again and things have changed so dramatically that the board feels they need to take a pulse check again. So I wouldn't want to say that this is a reoccurring thing. I think it's going to be as circumstances change to the level that they did in the recent years where there was an onslaught of issues, concerns, and requests for data that we just did not have.
Yes.
And is this a best practice performed by other 911 districts across the state?
It is a best practice.
Sounds good to me.
Entertain a motion.
Chairman, so just to be clear, we're not sure how much we're looking at in funding, but your stance again on whether or not your comfort level of us funding this. So we have no frame of reference on how much this is going to cost us.
And again, I think we should approve, in my opinion, I think we should approve this recommendation, and then we can ask our
Simply
administration
recommendation,
to
yeah.
come back to
Okay,
us
I got you.
with the cost.
Understood. Under those circumstances, yes, I
Wait just a second, I think you got something.
There's a number of firms that specialize in doing these type of audits, and you can have them set up different ways. Some people charge a flat fee for it. Some people charge a commission on the revenues they find that you didn't know about. So, or a combination. So it could be a number of different ways set up. So,
Like I said, I'm comfortable with this decision.
Yeah, so am I.
I just like to be informed to where we can have a discussion about the cost.
I move that we give administration permission to, or approval to perform this audit pending approval of the cost at a future meeting.
Second.
So we have a motion on the table that we approve that our administration can perform the audit at their discretion pending the cost coming back to the board. Is that right?
Yes.
And I have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It carries. All right, we'll go to the next agenda item, which is discussion and action for appointing the director and secretary of the board. Now, if you look at agenda item number 13 in your packet, you can see a little bit of the background that this comes from. There's no record of the board appointing the director or the secretary positions. This is housekeeping and cleanup of record keeping required by section 772.306. Mr. Bob Von Wolfrat has been performing the duties of director for 2 years. Charla, thank you. Will you forgive me? I'm getting old and I have bifocals. Charla Allison has been performing the duties of secretary for a year, and for the last 2 board meetings has kept the board's meeting records and minutes. It is administration's recommendation that the board, by resolution, appoint Robert Bob Von Wolfrat as the director and secretary, and approve Director Von Wolfrat's delegation of Crystal Charla Allison. Her title in the City of Abilene is Management Assistant Information Technology, and as the secretary, she will be necessary to carry out the purposes of the subsection of the section that I just said a while ago. That is a mouthful. But basically, it's given Bob Von Wolfrat the position of director of our administration that is also done through the City of Abilene. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your job at the City of Abilene is.
Chief Information Officer for the City of Abilene, and in that we deal with a ton of communication technology issues across the city and with our partners at the county and with other organizations, and also in concert with police dispatch and dispatch systems. So we're kind of integrated with that work already, so it's pretty much a natural fit to try and extend that resource. And I think we're well suited and have been very successful in helping this board move forward together, and we're going to continue to do that.
Thank you. Any questions by the board of Mr. Von Wolfbrett or Charlotte?
No.
Okay.
Do we want to give Charlotte the opportunity to do the same?
No. You have anything?
I move to appoint the director and secretary of the board.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Next one is discussion and action of setting the emergency service fee for FY 2022. This is what I alluded to earlier, and this is where we set the fee that goes on the phone bills of millions of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in our county, and what we collect. This is how our revenue happens, and so I'll be willing to listen to what the board has to say, what the administration has to say in regard to this fee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you are aware, at our last board meeting, we dropped the emergency service fee from 6% of the base rate to 2% at our May meeting. AT&T's monthly base rate has again increased by 50%. So last year's base rate for residential was $31. This year it will be $34. We haven't seen historically a huge increase in the residential lines. But business base rates have gone from $279 last year, or when we made our last adjustment, to $419 this year in 22, this coming year. Trunk lines went from $370 to $555. So they have dramatically increased their fees again. And it is our recommendation that we lower our percentage of the base rate to 1.5%. That will keep us in the budget. It'll keep us in the black and still provide plenty of revenue for contingencies and emergencies.
Question?
Which this keeps us, by lowering this percentage, it keeps us from operating at a profit, which by statute we do not do. So
We're allowed to maintain a balance for contingencies.
Right.
And for equipment refreshes and for that sort of thing. But you're correct.
but that's why we're lowering to 1.5%.
We're lowering it so we don't burden the taxpayer even more. So we don't wind up in a situation like we were in back in May.
Right.
When we have outraged citizens with, $25, $30 911 fees on their phone bill per line.
It boils down to we're trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money.
Correct.
And I wish every entity that took their money was, but we're bound and determined to do that.
So what you're saying is we're not really changing the amount of money that we're taking in that much, just the percentage because of the costs.
We made our best effort to adjust our percentage to keep the cost per line roughly the same.
Right.
I move that we approve the setting of the emergency service fee for FY 22.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I think the last thing on our agenda is adjournment.
Move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Don't forget to sign